Hello and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm Connor, that's Phil.
Yo.
And today we have a fight night card to discuss with you, our dear friends. Our only friends, really. Phil and I have both been disowned by every other person who used to...
Oh, and we hate each other. We hate each other as well.
Oh, God.
That's not... Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that went without saying. I thought people could sort of feel the a frisson is the word I wanted to use, but a frisson is small by definition, and that is not an apt way to describe the hatred we have for each other.
Yeah, whenever there's dead air from my end, it's not me struggling to think of something because my brain doesn't work. It's actually me attempting to hold back my roiling fury.
Yeah, you're seething.
Just hate you so much.
Son of a fucking... Oh, good one, Connor. Oh. Yeah. Oh, great point.
I will never say good one, Connor.
Not even sarcastically.
Never.
But hey, we're gonna keep that as controlled as we can, like we always do. We're professionals. Well, one of us is anyway. And we're gonna talk to you about Derek Lewis versus Tallison Teixeira. And if that doesn't sound good enough as a topic for an episode, I might agree with you. But I will say that this actually is the UFC continues their sort of limping attempt to return to the matchmaking of yesteryear, or the card building, I suppose, of yesteryear, because this card actually has several fights on it. It doesn't just feel like content from top to bottom. So hey, it's a trade-off. We get a main event where I'm like, okay, I can talk about this for 5 minutes, and then you'll understand exactly the dynamics of the fight as best as you can. But also, hey, we got Stephen Thompson, Gabriel Bonfim, welterweight turnover fight. We got Calvin Kattar versus Steve Garcia, sort of a riding the line between featherweight turnover fight and just dumb action. Cool. Nate Landwehr, Morgan Charriere. Okay. We got a test of a featherweight prospect who just had a rough loss. We got Max Griffin versus Chris Curtis as the featured prelim. Probably a fun action fight. There's actually quite a bit of like decent stuff on here.
Yeah, I think it's a good card. More specifically, it would be a good card to go and see live. If you were in Nashville
Absolutely, yeah.
and you went to see this because you'd be like, man, I know who both of these guys are. Almost all of these are some flavor of action fight. I think it's one of those cards where it manages to strike a weird mix between pretty much every single fighter being completely irrelevant to their division's title hopes, with the exception of the people in the really bad divisions. I think that's the meaning for why we have Tallison Teixeira in a main event after a grand total of one fight.
Yep.
Yeah, everyone else is in limbo, and it's all the pieces you can find in limbo, which are going to give you like a quite good time. Yeah, Jake Matthews cheating Njokuani.
Yeah. That's
a cool ass fight.
Yeah, I like it.
Ain't gonna mean anything. Got Mike Davis down there, and second from the bottom. It's just gonna be like a good, violent, meaningless time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're in Nashville and say a beloved grandmother has just died and you've gotten your inheritance and can therefore afford a ticket, I would actually recommend going to see this one.
Yeah. The Instagram engagement farmers who actually go to these things, or the people who want to prove their masculinity by buying tickets to the UFC to prove both how rich and manly they are going to have a good time.
Is this too cynical, Phil? Or...
I'm sure there's some super fans still out there somewhere.
Yeah. So hey, yeah, let's talk about speaking of cynicism, let's talk about the main event. Derek Lewis is, Well, I mean, I was going to say like no longer a real player in the heavyweight division. To be honest, the fact that Derek Lewis was ever any kind of player in the heavyweight division is just more unnecessary evidence of how truly dire heavyweight is on average. And I'm not actually convinced that he's really much worse than he was when he was like frequently in main events and being, given his title shot and whatnot. I think he's still pretty much Derek Lewis, so maybe we can just expect more of the same and we don't have to talk too much about the possibility of a decline. Tallison Teixeira, on the other hand, is very clearly in this fight because the UFC is like, is this a heavyweight prospect? Please, dear God, be a heavyweight prospect. Please be good. We need anyone younger than 36 who can actually like have a career and someday contend for the title.
Yeah.
And, he looks about as close as anybody who's considered for that kind of status. He does look like an unusually talented heavyweight.
Yeah. That is true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say where Derek Lewis is at the moment, right?
Yep.
Because I don't like his last fight against Rodrigo Nascimento. On the one hand, he did just look like Derek Lewis, just swinging hammers. On the other hand, he eventually ended up finishing him.
Yep.
On the other hand, he was like, he's never been like good at stopping people from getting the clinch or taking him down. I feel like he was maybe engaging in the clinch of his own accord more than he has in the past, which is not necessarily like a good sign for someone with his traits, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Because his main thing should be that he should be terrifying people on the feet.
Yeah. It is all. But it would also not be the first time that Derek Lewis has made a sort of strange, misguided, and ultimately mostly unsuccessful attempt to expand his game. You know what I mean? Like Derek Lewis has always been one of these fighters who will like come into a fight now and then with like a new move he's clearly been working on.
Yep.
And I think that wanting to take people down is actually like a more sensible addition to Derek Lewis's game than many of the other goofy shit he's tried, because he is devastating to opponents who are underneath him and always has been.
Mm-hmm.
So, I get it. It didn't look good. I think it worked kind of once for him and then stopped working. But hey, none of the wrestling in this fucking division looks good, so what do you want?
Yeah. The other thing that I find myself thinking is just, how much is Derek Lewis, functioning as a fighter just an element of the confidence of his opponents?
Mm-hmm.
If you just run up to Derek Lewis and try and hit him as hard as you can, you're just trying to finish him immediately. Can you just do that?
Yeah.
Can that just work? Because there's many things to be very worried about with Tallison Teixeira. As you said, at times he looks genuinely okay.
Yeah.
He's got decent shot selection. He can keep his balance.
Yep.
He's aggressive. He looks like he's in decent shape for a heavyweight.
Oh yeah.
He obviously has no defense because you wouldn't expect him to have any.
Well, I got to correct you, Phil. He does have defense. He has shoulder rolls. He's got slips. He's got pulls, and it's just that none of the defense works.
Okay.
He in his UFC debut, he was going for a lot of defensive ideas. Just none of them stopped the punches that were coming at him.
Yeah. And so, on the one hand, he could just go after Derek Lewis, try and punch him a bunch of times, and then Derek Lewis will fall over. This is a very classic way to take Derek Lewis out, is to just act like he has no power.
Yeah.
And simply try and hit him as hard as you possibly can, because it will probably work. On the other hand, something might come back at him that is far more powerful than anything he's ever faced in his life, and just put his lights out instantaneously.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the classic way to beat Derek Lewis. It is also a not uncommon way to lose to him.
Yeah.
This is just like the essence of heavyweight MMA, this fight. Right?
I guess it is.
That's why there's so little to say about it. Because it's like, okay, well, this guy's young. He looks pretty good. I generally don't even hold it against him that he's like going for all these stupid defensive moves that don't work. Because like shit, at least he's trying to learn to box.
Yeah, no kidding.
You can see that he's working on stuff like that. He's 25 years old.
Yeah.
Like, not only is that incredibly young in the modern UFC roster, but for heavyweight, he's a baby. So he probably does have time to improve. And if he continues working at these things, maybe he will be like a cool heavyweight counterpuncher in 3 or 4 years. Maybe sooner. Who knows? He does look like a very good athlete for his size.
Yeah.
But it's a heavyweight
I'm
fight.
Gonna pick him.
Yeah, I think I will too. But like, it's a heavyweight fight. He might just get fucking clobbered because Derek Lewis punches really hard, and that's the only reason Derek Lewis was a player in this division to begin with. He punches really hard, and that's still true.
Yeah, but you know, one of the things about Derek Lewis is that he is just a dynamism check.
Very much so.
You know, that's why I picked guy who's since completely disintegrated to beat him. Who was it? Mark Hunt from Wish.
Mark Hunt from Wish.
Yeah.
Chris Dawkins?
Tai Tuivasa.
Oh, Tai Tuivasa.
How did you not get that?
From... I don't know how I didn't get that, actually. I think the Wish... I got from context, Wish is what, like a discount store?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I spent too much time trying to put that together. It's not you have to make American references for me. You guys have burger over there?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, shit.
But anyway, so basically, if you have some kind of dynamic finishing offense in your toolkit, and you can be trusted to deliver it quickly,
yeah,
you're probably going to finish Derek Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for like Sergey Spivak on the ground, or Tai Tuivasa on the feet,
yep,
or Sergey Pavlovich, or Jelton Almeida.
Mm-hmm.
And the best person Derek Lewis ever beat was Volkov before Volkov started, at a point where Volkov wasn't finishing that many people.
Yeah, and he also lost to Volkov for approximately 14 minutes and 50 seconds of that fight. So,
yeah. So, you can look at literally everyone else Derek Lewis has ever beaten, right?
Yeah.
Except for Curtis Blades. I guess Curtis Blades is pretty dynamic. But those are very weird fights.
Curtis Blades also has like Ryan Bader syndrome, where he just finds a way to get flattened by people that he should have an obvious advantage over.
Yeah. So, someone 26, I'm just going to trust that he's confident and fearless enough to just run up to Derek Lewis and just punch him in the face as hard as he can, and it will work.
Mm-hmm. I think he's also, I especially think this because he is almost certainly going to drive Derek Lewis stumbling into a corner in the first 10 seconds of the fight.
Yeah.
Like, he's a big, tall guy who uses his jab a lot, actually. And his kicking game, like, Derek Lewis is going to be standing bolt upright with his feet together and square against the fence within the first 10 or 15 seconds of this bout.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and yeah, I do trust him. I'm not going to say trust him, but he is definitely more likely to make improvements.
Oh, no doubt.
Like, he's, entirely possible that he comes out and does something which is good.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, his last fight, he smoked Justin Taffer up against the fence.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, yeah, sure, that could work.
Yeah, that could work too.
And also just, raw aggression. So yeah, gotta pick him, and probably by round 1 knockout, as typically happens in these kind of cases.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know. This only happens at heavyweight. Like, look at how many fucking fights it took for Joshua Van to get on a main card. Heavyweight, one impressive performance, boom, main event. But I could hate it more, given that I think Tallison Teixeira, like, they're not stupid for looking at him and thinking this guy might be an actually good heavyweight, one of the few that we ever get.
Yeah, and I mean, they just don't have shit going on in that division at the moment. I mean, there's just nothing.
Right.
The problem is that, I mean, you've got Tom Aspinall, and he's essentially cleared the division out, apart from Cyril Gahn, who's off making films.
Has he...
Looking at the rankings, there's Cyril Gahn at 1, which is outrageous. Then Alexander Volkov, who he beat easily. Sergey Pavlovich, who he beat easily. Curtis Blades, who he beat easily. Jailton Almeida. And then, like, Waldo Cortez Acosta at number 6. Waldo Cortez Acosta.
Well, that's
Derek Lewis is still number 9.
Yeah. Well, that's what they need to do then. Make Waldo Cortez Acosta's time has come. He's clearly ready.
Yep.
Put him in that title fight.
Yeah.
There's only a slim chance that it will permanently destroy his confidence, and then certain sickos among us will get to enjoy watching him just fall apart in every fight going forward. I don't know who would enjoy that, but somebody would. And then that'll give, because heavyweights fight like once a year, that'll give Tallison Teixeira the time they need to rush him into a title shot, which also destroys his career.
Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, there's poor Sergey Pavlovich, who has genuinely worked on his craft.
Yeah.
And who is can just go nowhere. He can fight Waldo Cortez Acosta. I mean, he's a goddamn hero who saved us from Jairzinho Rosenstrike.
That's right.
He's not going to get anything.
No. But there will be, many decades after Sergey Pavlovich dies, people like you and I will still be laying flowers on his grave. That's his reward.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
We'll never forget you for that.
Yeah, your sacrifice will not go, will not be forgotten. Okay, well, that's the main event. Not a card which stands on its main event alone, and thank God for that. I think we're going to try to hit just a myriad of these other, like, mostly interesting, kind of half-decent quality action fights. That means Stephen Thompson versus Gabriel Bonfim, Calvin Kattar, Steve Garcia, Nate Landwehr, Morgan Charriere, and we may have time for a couple others besides that. We'll see. But we're going to hit as many as we can after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. We are going to talk about two fights that it occurs to us are sort of a kind on this main card, undercard here. Stephen Thompson versus Gabriel Bonfim, and Calvin Kattar versus Steve Garcia. These are two fights where, I suppose in the case of Gabriel Bonfim, he may actually turn into a welterweight contender. He has certainly had quite a lot of success in this division. I'm less sold on Steve Garcia, though he's certainly a fun, violent fighter, just like Bonfim.
Mm-hmm.
But in both cases, it's hard to ignore that the defining sort of dynamic element of the matchup is kind of one of these guys is old.
Yep.
And very, very much past his best. And so, yeah, Stephen Thompson, Gabriel Bonfim first. Stephen Thompson, in case you didn't know, is the old one. Not like an ancient god, but just of the two, he is the old one.
He would be appalled to hear you refer to him as such.
Yeah.
There's only one god. Just like that.
Yeah. There's only one god, and he is the god of blood. So yeah. In what way has Stephen Thompson gotten old? I think it's well established at this point, but tell me, Phil.
I mean, so one of the ways, paradoxically, Stephen Thompson getting old has in some ways made him a much more exciting fighter.
Yeah.
As we've mentioned a few times, because he simply cannot keep his feet moving as much as he used to. And so he's forced to sit down and throw more, frankly.
Yeah.
And I think just, he's just very experienced and knows where the timing for the counters are and is more willing to sit down on them. On the other hand, he's just slower, and he's, still, and we're still talking someone whose primary defense is foot speed,
mm-hmm.
and being out of the way of things, who still wants to simply leap in and out of range, keeping his eyes on the opponent at all times, but mostly with his head bolt upright,
mm-hmm.
who is still extremely easy, is now much easier to tag, but also mainly because he can't defend takedowns anymore.
Right. Stephen Thompson is almost like it's almost like a parody of getting old, the way that he has gotten old as a fighter. You know how like it's a common observation that like you start life as a baby and then you end life as a baby.
Yep.
Stephen Thompson has just become the version of Stephen Thompson that had that crazy fight with Matt Brown.
Yep.
He was shit at wrestling. And so like even Matt Brown was able to take him down and do some work to him on the ground. And now I think it's probably more because of loss of speed and loss of mobility. At the time, it was probably because of, in part, less experience and over-wariness of the takedown threat. He kept getting put in corners and having to trade punches with Matt Brown. And so it was like a crazy war. I suppose the only thing that's really makes this version of Stephen Thompson quite different from that one is I also think he's not as durable as he was then.
Yeah.
Because he showed some real toughness in that fight.
Yep.
But basically, he has just become the guy he used to be.
Yeah, just without the overwhelming athleticism that he had when he first got to the UFC.
Right. Which is to say, still there's worse fighters of Stephen Thompson's age than Stephen Thompson in the UFC, certainly.
Yeah, this is the thing, is that few of his only truly determined wrestlers, basically, have been beating him easily in these fights, have been, comprehensively beating him up. Like, Shavkat, Buckley, loads of people have been struggling mightily with Stephen Thompson. Because if you spend time with him on the feet, he still, as I said, he's willing to bite down on those opportunities, perhaps more than he used to be able to, because he knows there aren't going to be as many.
Yeah.
And, yeah, he might not be as physically tough, but he's incredibly mentally tough.
Yeah, no doubt.
He's never going to give up on himself. And so, yeah, it makes him a really troubling fighter to try and pick for, because essentially, on the one hand, every fighter goes through the same process of, I will pick terrible style matchups, I will pick bad style matchups at approximate skill parity against this person, and then you go to, I will pick bad style matchups without skill parity, and then you just go to, I will pick moderately troubling matchups, and then you just go to, I will pick everyone against this person at some point.
Right.
And it's very difficult to tell where Stephen Thompson is, because he's really doing a decent job of being a tough veteran. And Gabriel Bonfim does not look like someone who is a terrible style matchup for Stephen Thompson.
Right. He looks like a moderately bad style matchup at this point.
Yes.
In Thompson's career. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you mentioned that really determined wrestlers are the only ones who just like run away with it. Granted, Buckley and Rachmanov both finished him. But like the really comprehensive wrestling losses were those fights to Bilal Muhammad and Gilbert Burns. Because they're excellent wrestlers and they just took him down at every opportunity. But like Buckley, as we now know, Buckley, a man who basically has no plan coming into a fight, it had to occur to him that he should take Stephen Thompson down. And before it did, it was, I won't say Stephen Thompson was like working him, but it wasn't going great for Buckley. Thompson was still a problem on the feet. Even the version of Stephen Thompson that lost to Matt Brown was genuinely a pretty good MMA striker. And I think he remains a pretty good MMA striker. And so, yeah, the temptation is to look at this matchup and say, well, Gabriel Bonfim is a talented and powerful striker, but not a particularly principled
he's not
one.
Yeah, and he's not committed to being extremely aggressive.
Right.
Or high paced in a way which you think could necessarily overwhelm Stephen Thompson. In fact, with Nicholas Dalby, it was the fact that his pace was exceeded that lost him that fight.
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute, did he lose that fight or did he just struggle?
Which one?
Nicholas Dalby.
Yeah, I believe Bonfim did lose to Dalby.
Yeah. But yeah, on the other hand, I think I am just getting to the point where I'm just going to pick anyone with moderate athleticism and the ability to put together the pieces of a game plan that will work against Stephen Thompson.
Right.
I think one of the things that Bonfim has that, for example, like Buckley didn't. I mean, Buckley did try to take Stephen Thompson down a few times and fail.
Mm-hmm. It
was only when he started backing him up to the fence and then like one-punched him that he really got serious amounts of work done. But, again, that doesn't speak the best things about Stephen Thompson, but it's also something that he might struggle with the entire time. But Buckley's takedown attempts are not very difficult to see coming.
No.
And Bonfim does, for his part, actually do a good job of punching into takedowns in exchanges.
Yeah.
And against new Stephen Thompson, who has to place his feet and throw, I do think that he will get into an exchange with Bonfim, and then Bonfim will simply shoot under it and take him down. I think this will... the other thing is that obviously, that we haven't really mentioned, is that obviously Stephen Thompson does not have quite the dynamism he used to. He's just not finishing people.
Yeah.
Even when he's landing cleanly on them. And, Buckley does not have the greatest chin in the world. It seems to be paradoxically better at welterweight than it did at middleweight. But, he's not hard to hurt. And I don't think Stephen Thompson really hurt him much at all.
No, he didn't.
So, Yeah, I mean, I think Bonfim, the pace isn't right to be able to beat Thompson. Even the directionality is pretty neutral space kind of guy. But I just think you don't need that much. He just has athleticism and he can punch into takedowns. And I think at this point, it's probably going to be enough.
Yep. Yeah. Which, and he might also knock Stephen Thompson out of the feet. I mean, as I mentioned before, that dynamism and durability change for Thompson goes both ways, right? Like, Bonfim has looked quite durable, and Stephen Thompson has looked increasingly less so.
Yeah.
So, it's an age pick, and now it's time to find out to what extent the other fight here will also be an age pick. That's Calvin Kattar versus Steve Garcia. I do have a feeling that Calvin Kattar, and maybe this is just because this is like a really good division.
Yeah.
Calvin Kattar seems significantly worse off than Stephen Thompson.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's partially the fact that, like, Stephen Thompson went from having he's had an incredibly safe and frustrating game, which has served to insulate him for all this time, whereas Calvin Kattar is essentially a slow-footed, incredibly durable slugger.
Yeah.
Which means that he is not able to trick his way out of into wins, essentially. But also, I think it is also simply that Calvin Kattar has just been fighting people who are very good.
Yeah.
Which makes it very difficult to tell. He has mostly been fighting people that he simply never would have beaten, or that he always, he technically sort of lost to Josh Emmett, but that fight is simply how you would always expect Josh Emmett and Calvin Kattar to go.
Yeah, totally.
Is that they would just both hit each other a whole bunch.
Mm-hmm.
The only real outlier is like the Arnold Allen fight, but that's a weird injury.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's hard to say. Actually, none of it looks great. I've got to be honest. Now that I think about it,
the difference is that
Sterling.
Go on.
Yeah, Sterling and Zalal fights are at least ones I would expect him to make more competitive than that.
Yeah. There's a Zalal fight in particular. I mean, granted, it has a third round in which Kattar does sort of reach the point that he reached in every other fight in his career. I mean, it's basically like a rerun of the Zabit fight.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a mobile, long-range, evasive fighter who is running circles around his plodding feet. And then as he realizes he's lost every minute of the fight up until he reaches the 11th minute, the first minute of round 3, he decides, okay, I'm just going to go forward relentlessly. I mean, I've been absorbing everything anyway, so I may as well just chase him. And, part of the fact that didn't work, it comes down to Yusuf Zalal not being Zabit.
Yes.
Not completely falling apart and gassing, sort of like as a rule, the moment we get to the third round of a fight. Part of it too, I think, is because despite that, it is a round in which Zalal is putting himself in horrible positions. He's really riding the line of how safe you can really be while just constantly responding to the opponent's threats and offering nothing of your own. And still, Calvin Kattar doesn't really get anything off. Nothing effective. So maybe that suggests the loss of a step, that he's a bit slower. I don't know. The real difference here, though, is that even if Calvin Kattar is perhaps, if not more degraded than Stephen Thompson, degraded in a way which it means more in the featherweight division than it would at welterweight. Even if that's the case, I'm not really sold on Steve Garcia being an actually good fighter. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He's a barrel of laughs, you know? He's a great, fun fighter to watch. There's no denying that. But, if Calvin Kattar is like Calvin Kattar was so much more sophisticated, I think, of a slugger in his heyday than Steve Garcia has ever been.
Oh, yeah.
He is a true, reckless brawler, Steve Garcia. He's insane.
Yeah.
And, are we supposing that Calvin Kattar, have we reached the point where we're going to start picking Calvin Kattar to lose by KO? Because that's the only.
I've never seen that happen.
Right. And isn't that the only way that he really loses this fight? I mean, maybe not, but.
Yeah. That does feel like it, right? What we're talking is, what we're seeing here is that, it's an unstructured brawler against Calvin Kattar, whose main strength is that he can find finishes. It's like, are you going to find a finish on Calvin Kattar?
Mm-hmm.
This is a fight where none of Calvin Kattar's weaknesses are going to be weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
The plodding footwork is not going to be a problem for someone who's just charging him.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be able to pick up, counter punches on Steve Garcia. And I just don't know how Steve Garcia is going to react when he hits someone as hard as he can and it simply bounces off.
Yeah.
This, if I was going to pick against Calvin Kattar, and considering that he looked, as mentioned, pretty dreadful in this last two.
Yeah.
Stylistic issues aside, this is him against a really determined, genuinely good wrestler. Him against a really annoying back foot fighter of the kind that would always have given him problems. Picking against him here is to simply say that you think he has nothing left in the tank.
Yeah.
And maybe he doesn't. I mean, they're pretty bad. They're pretty bad fights.
Maybe he doesn't. And also, maybe, Phil, we have to consider this. Steve Garcia is not the kind of fighter that we would ever acknowledge as being actually good.
That is very true.
And while there's a bunch of asterisks and plenty of fights that mean nothing, the man is riding a 5-fight win streak. They've all been finishes.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows whether it's unusual power, unusual confidence, or just good luck. It's very difficult for me to say. Certainly the career momentum would suggest that Calvin Kattar is being set up to die to Steve Garcia here, but I don't know. Maybe this is just me falling into a classic trap once again, but Steve Garcia's fights are so stupid. He's self-destructively bad. It's like a miracle that he hasn't actually been successfully self-destructed in some of these fights. He ran out there and fell over and got his back taken by Kyle Nelson in the first 10 seconds of their fight.
Yep.
It's just there's no decision making. There's no control. He is himself super hittable. He's been knocked out. He's been knocked out before. He's been submitted before. He got into a stupid fight with Luis Pena early in his UFC career where he just couldn't do anything. He did significantly worse than another crazy reckless puncher in, I'm forgetting his name. Who's Sarah Longo guy? Matt, Frivola.
Oh yeah.
He did significantly worse against a really, like a clearly frustrating but very simple fighter to figure out in Luis Pena. He doesn't have I don't know. Like it wouldn't surprise.
And we're not talking death touch power here either. And you look back through his the people he's knocked out, right? Kyle Nelson, Sung Woo Choi, Akizal Costa, Chase Hooper. Like, what are we talking about here?
Costa's usually pretty tough. I mean, that's the one that stands out to me.
That's the one that sticks out. But like Sung Woo Choi, Kyle Nelson, these are not durable fighters. They're still less. Essentially one of the most durable fighters we've ever seen. Maybe not quite on the absolute top tier of, I don't know what you even have to do to hurt this person, kind of John Jones / Chito Vera level, but still,
he may as well be
outrageously durable.
I think he basically is on that level for me. Like,
I mean, we've seen him get hurt a bunch of times, like badly hurt.
Yeah, I got hurt by Max Holloway when he hit him with his 8,000th punch of the fight. Like, he didn't fucking fall down even. He kept getting wobbly legs and then just remaining on his feet. I don't know. I think he is, we talk about Carlos Condit as having one of the all-time great chins. Carlos Condit got knocked down like 5 times in one of his early UFC bouts with Jake Ellenberger. He just kept getting back up. I do think.
Yeah, I mean, but again, I would put Carlos Condit on a slightly lower tier than like Chito Vera. Like just a very slightly lower tier.
Yeah.
But some guys are absolutely immortal. He's not quite immortal, but he's very, very close.
Yeah, okay.
He's like who's the guy that he beat? The gatekeeper to the stars in the featherweight division.
That Calvin Kattar beat?
Yeah.
Gatekeeper to the stars.
Danny Gay.
Oh, Danny Gay, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, just like one of these guys where you're just like, I'm not picking anyone to KO you until it happens.
Danny Gay is actually impossible to hurt.
Yeah.
Until it happens. Hey, now Chito Vera himself has suffered a knockdown, so it does happen eventually. But yeah, he's certainly close to that tier. He is famously durable.
Yeah. I just gotta pick him, right? I mean, it's the age of the meme fighter.
Yeah.
And it's as encouraging for Steve Garcia's prospects as it ever would be, because as I said, he looked inert his last 2 fights.
Yeah.
But he doesn't need forward movement or anything. Steve Garcia will simply come to him in this fight.
Yeah.
I cannot pick him. I cannot in good conscience pick him, no matter how bad Calvin Kattar looks. If Calvin Kattar loses this, he is officially done, and I will not pick him pretty much ever again.
Yes. I mean, I almost came into this already feeling like I would have otherwise been at that point with Calvin Kattar, but maybe that's a little unfair. Maybe that, he's definitely slowing down, but most of these are still style matchups that would have been difficult for him even when he was young.
Mm-hmm.
But Steve Garcia, it's hard to envision in what way he's a difficult style matchup even now that Kattar's old.
Yeah.
He's just a maniac who punches hard and gets hit while punching hard and literally closes his eyes and swings.
Yeah.
That can't work against Calvin Kattar. I refuse to believe that'll work. If that works, then show me. I need that to be proven to me.
Yep.
All right. Well, can't wait to come back next week and try to explain how Calvin Kattar got instantly slapped by Steve Garcia, who's now fighting for the featherweight title.
Well, I mean,
he then knocks out Alexander Volkanovski.
If he gets slapped, it would be more understandable to me. Like, imagine if he loses a decision. Imagine if he just gets outboxed.
Fuck. I don't want to.
That would be a truly shocking outcome.
You can't make me imagine it. Yeah. We'll see. I don't know. It's hard for me not to have the feeling when these fights come up now. I've done this long enough where I'm like, am I missing something? Remember when I had this fucking feeling against, Cool's a hobby brother? I don't know.
Yeah. I know.
Against Jose Aldo, and I was like, I don't know. And you're like, no, that's stupid, Connor. He's definitely, come on, this guy sucks. He's still Jose Aldo. I don't know. Sometimes maybe we just underestimate the extent to which confidence and momentum really do matter for the results of fights. And Steve Garcia must be feeling himself right now like he never has before. But I need to see it.
I need to see it.
All right. Well, let's take our final break. When we come back, we still have quite a few other, at the very least, half interesting fights to discuss. But top of the list is definitely Nate Landwehr versus Morgan Charriere. I still haven't really figured out how to pronounce that. Does the E on the end change the way that
I thought it was just Charriere. Do you even pronounce the...
Because normally if with that pronunciation there would be no E, right? Charriere.
Yeah.
Does the E do anything?
I don't think it does, but who knows?
Okay. I'm gonna
make it an effort to not have to learn French.
That's right. The war, I forgot.
Exactly.
Let's take a break. When we come back, Morgan Charriere versus Nate Landwehr after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
All right, welcome back to Heavy Hands. Let's talk about one more main card fight here. Nate Landwehr versus Morgan Charriere. Charriere is an interesting prospect. He is clearly absurdly talented. Great athlete, fast, powerful, has a great gas tank on top of that. He is also clearly very skilled. You know, particularly when you let him sort of get on an offensive roll. He can put his strikes together brilliantly and throw in defense and come back with counters and combination. I know that Nathaniel Wood is very good. But still, I admit I was surprised at just how flummoxed Morgan Charriere was by Nathaniel Wood in his last fight. It kind of caused me to pump the brakes on my estimation of him. Maybe that's unfair. Maybe it was just a bad night. Maybe a particularly troublesome style matchup in a way that I haven't quite figured out. But he was dancing to the beat of Nathaniel Wood's drum for the entirety of that fight. He could not, insert himself into the contest until Nathaniel Wood himself had his, characteristic, I'm going to kind of stop doing the stuff that was working and just move around and have fun mode.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I think this was definitely a case of thinking too much.
Yeah.
From Charriere, and a case of him not realizing how much of a reactive fighter he is.
Mm.
And yeah, Nathaniel Wood sort of setting the tempo on him meant that he was constantly thinking about what was going to be coming next, which ended up being like a perfect way for Nathaniel Wood to make his way into the fight, because he's a very clever, crafty, offensive fighter who essentially just could build off his jab and every setup he had off it for the entire fight.
Yep.
Just setting up his right hand, occasionally going to the body, working the low kick, just able to cycle through every one of his setups. And Charriere was like, which one's going to be next?
Yeah.
Which one's going to be next? Which one's going to be next? And he just couldn't get into gear or start dictating himself, which is what he really needed to be doing, right?
Right, exactly.
He couldn't find a way to start dictating with his own jab. And so, yeah, he was just constantly from behind. And And yeah, Nate Landwehr is a very different style matchup.
Yeah, that goes without saying. He's not. It's the Nathaniel Wood is interesting to talk about from a, where is Morgan Charriere destined to go perspective. It's not necessarily incredibly relevant to this matchup, which looks like one that Do Ha Choi boxed the fucking ass off of Nate Landwehr. It's the first time he ever had defense in a fight of any kind, and Nate Landwehr's punches were so pattern-driven, so predictable, that Do Ha Choi was able to just counter him all night long.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think Morgan Charriere can also play that same game, basically, right?
Yeah, because Nathaniel Wood gave him such complicated offensive questions to ask. He gave him such complicated offensive questions that he spent all this time trying to puzzle out what the answer was.
Right.
Nate Landwehr is not going to do anything of the sort.
Right.
Nate Landwehr is a very simple, very straightforward fighter, and there is no way that Morgan Charriere is going to get kind of lost in the sauce trying to figure out what's going on in this fight.
Right.
There are obviously threats that Nate Landwehr presents, in that he's just like a violent dude, but is not going to be something that is going to flummox Morgan Charriere for long. Nor is Nate Landwehr going to sort of carefully build out a lead and then sit on it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the other one is, the other one, of course, is the Chepe Mariscal fight. I don't know if you may have just mentioned that. I lost you for a second, but I don't think I...
No.
Okay. I don't think I actually lost any of what you were saying. That is the other one that is, if this fight is difficult for Morgan Charriere, that's the one to look to for the way in which it might be difficult. But I think Chepe Mariscal is like a blend of the likes of Landwehr and the likes of Nathaniel Wood.
I don't mind saying I just think Chepe Mariscal is a better fighter than Nate Landwehr.
Yeah, no question. He's like much more flexible, much cleverer, and if anything, more consistently devoted to being crazy aggressive, to keep the flow of ideas coming, and probably more well-rounded too. I mean, that's another part. Chepe Mariscal is on some actually good Anthony Hernandez shit half the time he's fighting, where the number of shit you have to deal with, the variety of shit you have to deal with, and the way he puts everything together is genuinely very impressive. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like Wood beat him essentially on depth. Mariscal could not beat him on breadth. And I don't honestly think Landwehr has either of those things.
Right.
He's simply tough, and he's quite difficult to take down. He's tough and violent and hard to take down. And unless Charriere has the idea that he's just going to go for a wrestling-heavy performance for some inexplicable reason, which would definitely be a reason to heavily discount him going forward, I don't really see why he can't just do the Do Ha Choi thing. Sorry. Yeah, it was the Do Ha Choi thing.
Yeah.
Making sure I'm not getting mixed up with some Sung Woo Choi from the last fight we were talking about.
Right. Yeah. So, Morgan Charriere is the pick. It's just, I think you probably hit the nail on the head, with the, Wood matchup. That's just something we will have to consider every future time that we talk about Morgan Charriere, right? It's like, will it be a problem that he is prone to wait on his opponent and try to get their timing by just letting them give it to him? Will that
just
be
get hypnotized into losing rounds?
Yeah. I don't think that's Nate Landwehr. Okay. Well, there was one other one that you wanted to talk about, Phil. That was, Jake Matthews versus Chidi Njokuani. I think both of us are, not alone in saying that we just kind of love Chidi Njokuani.
Mm-hmm.
He's just kind of a really cool, if still, largely dysfunctional fighter. He does a lot of cool shit though.
Yep. Yeah, he's exactly that kind of analyst fan favorite, right? Who's never going to quite make it. I mean, he's really pretty old at this point. But he's got just like a wonderful mix of like dynamic offense, and his takedown defense isn't quite going to hold up, and his chin isn't quite going to hold up, and his defense isn't going to quite going to hold up. But then you see him in the right matchup where he someone like clinches up stupidly with him, and he just slams his elbow into their temple 4 times, and you're like, damn, this guy looks cool when he's doing his shit.
Mm-hmm. Or the absolutely dazzlingly varied kicking game that he was playing against Zaleski dos Santos. Like,
yep,
he is a freakishly fast and flexible kicker. And yeah, it's just that it takes a matchup like that, where like Zaleski had none of the right ideas. I mean, you want to talk about somebody losing because they inexplicably choose to just wait on their opponent the entire time?
Yeah.
That was one where it was the perfect blank canvas for Chidi's game to shine. On the other hand, he is capable of having a very close, tough fight with Reese McKee.
Yeah.
Who is sort of a standard bearer for guys who don't seem like they're just athletic enough to be in the UFC. And yet, Njokuani actually kind of struggled with him quite a bit. He got, knocked out by Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. It's like, he gets taken down quite easily too. I mean, I don't think that'll be a particular problem against the modern version of Jake Matthews, but it's just another one of these sort of glaring weaknesses in Njokuani's game, which makes him not actually a great fighter.
Yeah. What's up with Jake Matthews?
Islam. Islam. That's what's up.
Yeah.
He converted. And mashallah, it's cool, slick, seemingly slick boxing moves. That's the order of the day. As it says in the hadith.
But at some point, Jake Matthews was actually like a fairly decent wrestle boxer of the kind I would expect to actually, unfortunately, beat Chidi Njokuani. Like, he had a pretty good level change. For example, you look at Jake Matthews at the moment, and you wouldn't expect him to beat prime Leech, Li Jingliang, because he's just a mediocre boxer who thinks he's better than he is, and that he would just get his leg torn up and he would get outboxed. But he did beat him, like, very comprehensively, and at least partially because he had, like, a really nasty level change, and he's quite athletic. And that seems to have gone.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, has that gone because he just doesn't... Is it gone because he's doesn't think he needs it, or is it gone because he literally can't do it anymore? Because if he's going to try and box with Chidi Njokuani, I would expect Chidi to smoke him. Maybe. Yeah.
I mean, I kind of would too, just because he's probably going to try to do that from, like, long range.
Yeah.
And, like, shuffle side to side, and, it's about as, in the right matchup, he can make it look really good, but, like, let's be honest, it's, like, about as good as, like, Uriah Faber's outside boxing game. Like, what if I step this way? Oh, you're chasing me. Boom, cross. Now I'm going to step this way. Oh, you're chasing me. Boom, cross from the other side. Like, there's not a lot of, There's not a lot of ability in Matthews' game to actually like hold his ground or to force the opponent to walk into his punches. There certainly isn't much like defense to be used to like. He looks like a guy who should be a great counterpuncher, but unless he just catches your first step perfectly, and runs you into like a same time counter on the way in, there is no counterpunching ability there. Not really, because he's just like constantly moving his feet and doesn't really like being on the defense. Mm-hmm. Or at least his conception of being on the defense is to move around a lot. I mean, what reason would there be for him to be incapable of wrestling? He's still only 30 years old.
Yeah.
He doesn't,
just that he doesn't seem to like doing it anymore.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think he just like, he had like a Damian Maya moment at some point in the last few years, where he like fell in love with a certain aspect of the sport, and that's just what he wants to do now. I think that's it.
Yeah. It's kind of a shame because he was a genuinely pretty good grappler.
Yeah.
A genuinely like moderately threatening wrestling game.
He should be out there doing what Joaquin Buckley's doing to people right now.
Yeah.
You know, being like the just all-terrain, aggressive, young, athletic guy who's just cleaning out all the old guys clogging up the rankings.
Yeah. He is fast enough that I do find myself worried for GD.
Oh, certainly.
He is simply just quick. And, that's again, you can't really be confident in GD against pretty much anyone that he's likely to fight. And frankly, his current small run, as modest as it is, even that has been a surprise to me, a very pleasant one. I think, you know what? I think I'm going to Sadness Edge. I don't think it's like a good stylistic mix. I think it's just one of those ones where we're going to be surprised at how young and quick Matthews looks in the striking exchanges.
Yeah.
And he might just clip GD and maybe remember how to wrestle. I would really like to be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you could look to that fight Matthews had with like Phil Rowe. Rowe is a much less sophisticated fighter than Chidi Njokuani. But it maybe kind of equals out in that he's being younger and less fully formed, just has a lot of gaps, takes a while, can take a long time to actually get rolling or put anything together. I'm not sure. I think for Njokuani, it's more of just a kind of mental lapse thing, or he gets like really zeroed in. He has like favorite ideas. And doesn't actually, he's too tactical maybe, to be ready for everything that might be coming his way. And that was a fight where Matthews had plenty of success. I don't know though, I think I'm going to stick with, Matthews just doesn't do the things he should be doing against a guy like Chidi Njokuani. He's just going to hang around and let Njokuani pressure him. And let him come forward where his kicking game is really very comfortable to use. And he's gonna dive in with long range punches and then duck and take his eyes off the opponent to avoid the counter. There's gonna be so many opportunities for him to get pulled into a knee, or head kicked. And a lot of attritive damage that he can absorb against the longer, taller guy while flitting around. I double checked to make sure that this pattern was actually what I thought it was, because Matthews did have that submission against Darius Flowers. Not that that's a super meaningful win, but it was in fact Flowers trying to take him down and failing completely that put Jake Matthews in position to darce him. Matthews just doesn't go for takedowns.
Yeah.
So
it's more than fair. I'm just worried that she's going to look old. And I would like to be happy and surprised again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's going to have a lot of opportunities to control the initiative here. And when you allow that to happen, we saw in the Zaleski fight, when you allow Chidi Njokuani to stalk forward and put his ideas together, he is actually a really sharp, creative, and dangerous striker.
Yeah. I just think it's the age it's both the age and the fact that we're talking a middleweight to welterweight against a lightweight to welterweight transition, which normally, isn't great for the person on the smaller end of things, but it's just going to mean that like Matthews might end up looking like twice as fast as him.
Yeah.
And I am a little concerned by that.
Yeah.
As Chidi, of all the cool things about him, is not the fastest fighter in the world.
Yeah. Not doesn't have the greatest foot speed, certainly.
Yep.
Not the most
but yes,
agile fighter.
Definitely just hoping that he wins and that it looks awesome.
Yeah. It's a fun matchup,
Yeah.
This whole card is just kind of sprinkled with, there's a couple of them that are like obvious turnover fights trying to create a prospect. None of the prospects except for maybe Tallison Teixeira, and then only because of the complete paucity of talent in his division. None of them feel like sure things, but pretty much all the matchups look fun. And I think I'm at this point, I'll take that. Fighters I know in fights that look fun is pretty good. In the current age of MMA and UFC.
Yeah, it's just a solid. It's what would have classed as a meaningless fight card back in the day before we knew what meaningless truly is.
Exactly.
Because, everyone. It's meaningless in terms of where almost all the fighters are going.
Yeah,
but it's all just people that you care about in fights that are going to be cool.
And really, like, we know this now. It could be it could be actually meaningless. Like I might even have to disagree with that. Like we have seen what meaninglessness means in the last year of UFC cards. I know who these people are.
We have truly looked into the void.
Yes, and this makes me feel like there is still life out there. There are future possibilities. People are still, starting families, getting new jobs. Maybe it's not all over. Maybe it all doesn't all just lead to the grave. So hey, I'll take it. And that'll do it for this week's episode of Heavy Hands. We did drop a bonus episode last week. We had a pretty fun talk about movies and Gareth Edwards as a director and stuff. Maybe I'll publish that as another off-topic chat bonus episode. People seem to like that one. So you can probably find that over on the Heavy Hands Patreon. Also, I know basically more than a week has passed and you've already forgotten who Joshua Van is. But go check out my piece on Joshua Van on my Substack, facepunching.substack.com. I appreciate your support, and it is a pretty long and in-depth thing. In fact, I think I'm going to split it into 2 parts because I had so many cool examples of things to look at from that fight. So please check that out on my Substack. I appreciate that. And we'll be back next week to talk to you about UFC 318. Very short gap between pay-per-views. And, we don't have an extra, there's not a missing card in here, is there? No. Making sure I wasn't 2 weeks away. It seems so soon after UFC 317.
Nope. Getting straight back in there.
But hey, Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier 3. Fine.
Patricio Pitbull in a much more reasonable style matchup.
Absolutely. Yeah. Paulo Costa is still in the UFC, apparently. He's fighting Roman
Yeah, sure, whatever. No, he isn't. No, he isn't. He's not fighting.
Is it the greatest pay-per-view I've ever seen? Certainly not, but maybe that's why they're rushing into it. One way or the other, it does have some cool fights and some beloved fighters on it, so we hope you, like us, are looking forward to talking about that with us next week. And until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.
It's also had Matthews versus Rowe running in the background at some point, and there is a point at which Rowe tries a flying knee, and then Matthews sort of flailing karate chops him directly in the dick.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Well, fingers crossed for Chidi. God.